Welcome to the party. I'm Sam Ekstrom of Locked On Sports Minnesota. Today we compare these Vikings to the last two 5-0 Vikings teams that had a bye in Week 6. And I think those seasons, I haven't checked, I think they ended pretty well.
Hey, this is Arif Hasan from the Wide Left Substack. Happy bye week to those who celebrate.
This is Luke Braun from Locked On Vikings, and the Vikings did Aaron Rodgers a favor, putting him on his back so he could see all the chemtrails better.
Luke Inman at Luke_Spinman. Harrison Smith, first ballot Hall of Famer. Book it.
Locked On Sports Minnesota Podcasts. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota Football Party. It's your guys hanging out talking next-level Vikings football. So join in with Arif Hasan, Locked On Vikings Luke Braun, Superior Sports Talk's Luke Inman, and Vikings insider Sam Ekstrom, plus the biggest names in Minnesota football for the Minnesota Football Party. And it starts now.
Happy Monday to all. The Minnesota Vikings are 5-0. They win in London by a 23-17 score over A-Rod and the Jets. We're going to break every bit of it down. Top moments from the win. Arif Hasan is in London still. He checks in, gives us a view of what it was like in the stadium. We will compare this Vikings team to previous 5-0 Vikings teams that might not have gone so well. I did check during the intro. I guess there's some bad history with 5-0, so we'll talk about that a little bit later. Nerdy stats, bye-week nitpicks, and so much more on today's Minnesota Football Party. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making us your first watch or listen. For your second one, check out Locked On Vikings. Great daily Vikings content with our guy, Luke Braun. And hey, please subscribe to Locked On Sports Minnesota on YouTube and listen to our audio on the Locked On Vikings podcast feed. Today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. They help you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply. We'll go straight to our correspondent in London, Arif Hasan, who was at Tottenham Hotspur yesterday. He was, I imagine, sitting in the rain, enjoying the heck out of a Vikings victory. It looked cool. It looked cool in the second half, the mist coming down, people slipping and sliding all over the pitch, as they call it. Aaron Rodgers looking increasingly frustrated, getting mad at everybody, the coach, the officials, his teammates, himself, the Vikings. Seeing a frustrated A-Rod is as good as it gets for your viewing pleasure.
It's a classic, I think. Yeah.
How was your
Like
experience?
home. I think you're right that the imagery of like this mist/drizzle kind of floating down and turning all of these like bright stadium lights into like these halo effect kind of just beacons of light that you can't really kind of place or whatever. I mean, it looks gorgeous. I took a couple of pictures just from that. It felt a little miserable, if I'm being honest. So the press box is not really like the press box in most American NFL stadiums is just like in with the suites, right? It's indoors or whatever, and you look out and you're kind of insulated from the crowd and whatever, which makes like some experiences kind of really stand out. Like at the Chiefs game, for example, when the noise of the crowd starts reverberating inwards, that's like really significant and big. Here you're among the crowd, and that's fine, except it's an open air stadium, and so I'm working on my laptop. And it is beginning to rain, right? That's not like a wonderful experience to have to navigate. Now, it never got so bad. Again, it was just like mist drizzle in the second half the whole time. It never got so bad that I actually ever felt like I needed to put away my laptop. It did make the touchpad a little bit annoying. I left my mouse back at the hotel because I'm an idiot. But yeah, it made the touchpad a little bit annoying. But yeah, for the most part, like, it looks amazing. It feels whatever. That said, I like doing my work like outside when it's 60 and there's very little wind. It's just when that changes, it really is not great.
It's obviously it's a neutral site out there. It kind of looked like when they kind of panned to the crowd, like they've made some improvements over the years, like the aesthetics and whatnot, to like actually make it feel closer to an actual home game. Just over the years, I remember that first game versus Pittsburgh. It was like, okay, we're just gonna paint the end zone purple, maybe introduce the home team coming out of the tunnel, kind of thing. Now you got Jared Allen blowing the Gallahorn and all this and that. And
It was a Vikings home game. Like
that's cool.
Just like
that's cool.
I've been to home games in US Bank Stadium that have had a smaller proportion of Vikings fans than was here in London. Now again, there's always neutral fans, right? There's always, people wearing Buccaneers, Dolphins. Dolphins jerseys are really popular here because the NFL first started showing in the 80s when Dan Marino was playing. And so people kind of just held on to that. A couple of Jets jerseys, of course. I mean, it was easier to find, to figure out kind of what jerseys weren't represented, right? I saw a Colts jersey. I didn't see a Browns jersey, which, that makes sense.
They did say on the broadcast that there somewhere in there was one from all 32, and they were very proud of that.
That's cool.
Oh,
There's always one
I'm sure
Odell
there was.
Beckham Jr.
Just
jersey
didn't see
over there, too.
That's a good point. I just didn't see it. So
What Brown jersey?
I think...
What Browns jersey? What Browns jersey?
You're right. Yeah. Oh God. But I would say that like on the way there, because I was on transit, I would say the proportion of fans from like Vikings to Jets was like 5-1. Milling around the stadium, it might have been closer to 3-1. Inside the stadium, it looked like somewhere in between the two. It was like very, oh my God, James Kuno, KOC at England, bangers and mesh. They did run like a decent amount of mesh too, especially at the beginning of the game.
It's what they called for Nick Mullins coming off the bench.
Yeah, which
too bad Ty Chandler's broken.
Oh, yeah, I mean that too.
We'll get into that. They flew in Alan Roach to be the PA too, and that just makes it feel like a big game, like a Vikings game.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Alan Roach hire, sneaky good.
That was sneaky good. They didn't do the dun dun sound effect on every third down though, did they? That's huge. That's worth like a single win every season alone. Come on.
They did have the skull chant, and it was very.
Oh, that's
popular.
cool.
Yeah,
that's cool. It just didn't. Yeah. I like the way they've evolved that home field feel because it does kind of stink, and usually it balances out. Last time versus the Saints, it was a road game, and vice versa. But over the years, it feels like they have put in some effort and made some improvement into actually feeling like a home game.
I mean, honestly, I think there's just a lot of Vikings fans.
That could be too. Honestly, that could be too. There is a lot of Vikings fans over there.
Yeah. It had. What's interesting is that the Jaguars do not have many fans here. Like, despite all of the very clear effort and intention involved, it's just like
Really?
if you're
2
bad.
years ago, it felt like there was a lot of Jaguars.
Well,
They
It's
tried.
the Saxonville season, but then they jumped off that bandwagon.
yeah, I've been talking to like a bunch of people here, and I'm like trying to like gauge the relative strength of like fan bases here and stuff like that. And, like, yeah, okay, there's a fair amount of Buccaneers fans and stuff like that. A fair amount of Irish Steelers fans is like a huge thing. But I'm trying to like figure out like, are there a lot of Jacksonville fans here? Because they play here twice a year now, I guess. But they've played here every year. It feels like, it's the most accessible fan base to be. It's the closest time zone, so you might get better at being able to watch their games or whatever. I don't know. But no, they're not making a ton of headway here. So
Yeah.
not a ton.
You being in the stadium, you missed a bit of a sketchy NFL Network broadcast where they called it
It was
the
a disaster.
It
the
was
Jallarhorn.
Not sketchy. It was a catastrophe.
Bad
The
reviews.
Jallarhorn is what they blew.
Rich
Jallarhorn.
Eisen,
The
diehard Jets
Jallarhorn.
fan, by the way.
Yeah,
Riker.
diehard Jets fan on the play-by-play.
Eisen's
Missing
not a play-by-play
replays.
He's not a
announcer.
play-by-play any guy. I love Eisen. He is not a play-by-play guy to begin with, though, and you could tell. You could just kind of hear it.
Graphics.
They missed a couple snaps. It was like watching a road preseason game
Dude,
where
they
like the
didn't-
announcer is for the other team and
Yeah.
then they like can't get all the snaps all the time.
Yeah, no,
Like,
that's
it was bad.
That's a good point. They didn't show the replay of the Ivan Pace running into the kicker.
Okay, yeah,
For,
yeah.
like,
so
10 minutes.
So
Yeah.
like when I was like tweeting out all the stuff that was happening, which I had a couple more typos than I usually have when I'm live tweeting games. It was raining, so give me please.
Yeah.
His
Um,
touch, he forgot his
touchpad,
mouse,
doesn't
right?
count.
He got his mouse.
You get one little drop on that touchpad, man. It's over.
Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, so like people were like, yeah, man, the broadcast never replayed it. So what's really great about the stadium's press area, which I would love to see replicated in press boxes like around the United States in every sporting venue, is that you and the person next to you share this little telecast. That is not the network. I mean, I guess it runs through NFL Network, but it is like an always on the field kind of view from the broadcast angle. And so when the broadcast replays, this thing replays and stuff like that, it's a little bit delayed. But you don't get the commercials. So like when it goes to commercial, you continue to get like a broadcast view. And then when you go back from commercial, it's the same as the broadcast. And so I was able to watch these replays, right? It was running into the kicker. Like I wasn't bothered by it. I was like, yeah, it's a special teams mistake. You can't make those. Now there was a run into Ryan Wright that probably should have been called. That wasn't, but that's a separate thing.
The Vikings are feast or famine on special teams. A lot of famine yesterday. We'll dive more into that as well when we nitpick the bye week. But what were some other resonant moments? Braun, let's start with you. Just like what stands out from yesterday's game that I think in large measure was an ugly one. You got to win ugly sometimes. But I don't think you walk away with a plethora of great moments. I think the defense, it's a defense that you pay to watch. You want to watch this defense on the field. They are fun to watch. They're entertaining to watch. They make plays. They have good celebrations. They have long hair in the case of Andrew Van Ginkel that is fun to watch run down the field. Like there's all the moments I think about are all on the defensive side of the ball yesterday.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it was very much a defensive game. And like the Vikings after the game were like, yeah, this good job defense. Justin Jefferson was like, thanks guys. We got to pick ourselves up. I think picking off Aaron Rodgers 3 times, which is something that's the 6th time that's ever happened to him. And it's only the 3rd time since 2010, or 2009, actually. Like, that's a pretty crazy accomplishment. And those are the plays that are like, rattling around in my head, is the Van Ginkel one and then the Stephon Gilmore one at the end. But like, that's something that just doesn't happen. Like, Rodgers is so quick with the ball and he's so safe with the ball that like that Van Ginkel pick 6 was out of character for him.
Yeah.
It was like he got in a way that you don't get Aaron Rodgers on that. And then like the Gilmore one, I think was either just a miss or was trying to put it in a place that Mike Williams didn't really know he was going to put it, but that feels generous. I don't know. That's what stands out to me, like the offensive woes and all that. It feels really easy to excuse because like, it was London, maybe that was weird. It got slick out there and you could tell like Ty Chandler couldn't get his footing right. Like, that like there's reasonable excuses that you go, okay, maybe this one was the weird one and it's unlike the rest of the season for a reason. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know, what kicks around in my head is just all those defensive plays. 7 3-and-outs, by the way. 7 of 13 possession.
On
7.
Offense or the Jets?
No, for the Jets. 7 3-and-outs of 13 possessions. More than half the time they got the ball, they went 3 and out, including the interceptions because they happened on the first third down.
Right, because the Van Ginkel one is so wild to me because I remember, when the Vikings were playing against Washington back in like 2012, 2013, so before Mike Zimmer even showed up, I was talking to a Washington blogger about, this strange look. They called it sugaring the A-gap, and they put 2 linebackers in between, right on either side of the center. It's like crazy. It's like, oh, and what happens here is both of them rush, and then whichever way the center turns, that guy drops back into coverage. And usually they'll drop back into coverage where the strength of the formation is, because that's where the hot route is going to be. This was in 2012, before we had a Mike Zimmer defense, right? And then Mike Zimmer does it, and that happens. Van Ginkel's doing the same thing, except it's, either side of the guard, but it's the same thing. The Vikings had, I think, 7 on the line. They had 4 picket fenced at the sticks. This is one of the most common third down looks the Vikings have, right? They have, like, 4 coverages, right? It's like it's not that complicated. Once
you get past the snap,
right? Yeah, it's not that complicated to like diagnose on film. If there's like 7 people coming for your head, I imagine that the stress kind of changes that. But it's Rodgers. Like that's the whole point of having Aaron Rodgers. Van Ginkel does the same thing. Guard turns towards him. He vacates into the zone. The zone is where the hot route is. pick and then somehow a pick six. I mean, Grenard said after the game that like he was like, I did not think that would be a pick six, and then I saw Harrison Smith throw a block, and I was like, yeah, no, I guess we're doing this, and that was the feeling that I had watching. And I was like, I wonder if he should go down. Oh my God.
Rodgers giving up on that play too was great. And this was pre-injury too. Rodgers wanted no part of it.
Yeah.
This was the third drive. He wasn't even that mad yet.
Yeah.
Have you guys?
And that one was all on him. He can't be mad at a receiver for that one.
That was
like
on
you just got cooked.
You might get mad at Mike Williams for that last one. I actually don't think that that's a good throw, even if Mike Williams knows everything.
Throw.
But I do think
I don't know.
I think it's a combination of Stephon Gilmore knowing where that ball is going better than Mike Williams does. Right? It's like Stephon Gilmore knows the Aaron Rodgers offense better than Williams, which makes sense. Williams was kind of a late addition to the team, then he was hurt. And also, it was not a good throw. And so that's a bad combination of things.
Yeah, I don't understand what the throw is. Like, is that supposed to be a back shoulder throw? Like, it was almost on the hash mark. It was so far inside.
So this is a huge problem, especially on throws to Garrett Wilson throughout the game. So Aaron Rodgers is like a back shoulder merchant. That's basically what Cam Bynum called him. It was amazing. After the game, he's like, we spent like a lot of time going over back shoulder throws in the film. Like we were like, it's all back shoulder throws. And he's right, except it's a little bit more than that, right? Because it's back shoulder throws or it's inside throws to literally the other shoulder, the inside shoulder. And he throws it based off of the leverage of the defensive back, but you have to know what he's looking for as a receiver, and sometimes he'll signal what it's going to be before the snap. But here's the thing, he doesn't tell his receivers what the signals are. They just have to learn the signals. This is a huge Kalen Kaler piece a couple of years ago about how Rodgers doesn't like connect with receivers because they just have to learn on the fly what the signals are. He doesn't teach them during training camp because a receiver might leave the team and join another team, and now everyone knows the signals.
Wow.
And so Garrett Wilson was constantly looking over the wrong shoulder when Rodgers was throwing these otherwise actually quite accurate passes, and Wilson is just looking for the ball at the wrong spot. And that's why he and Alan Lazard are a much better connection right now.
Yeah, you can see it.
Lazard is leading the team in receiving touchdowns, leading the team in receiving, even after this game where Garrett Wilson had like 20 receptions or 20 targets for 100
It's been going on for a while
yards.
now. Yeah.
But it's bad, and I think that's what happened with Mike Williams.
Have you guys seen the team stats side by side? Like pretty much a dead heat across the board as far total team yards, 1 yard difference, 254 to 253, almost an exact tie. Same amount of first down, 17 each. Time of possession within 37 seconds of each other. Penalty yards.
Wow.
Penalty yards. Both teams were brutal. End of the day, it was a 4 yard difference in penalties from one team versus the other. Total plays. Jets ran 5 more plays. That's it. Both teams went over.
4 more yards and another completion, and that's
honestly, I said it on the postcast. I mean, really, it feels like when you look at especially those stats just side by side, almost carbon copy one another. Vikes won the turnover battle by 1. You take that a step deeper. Sam Darnold makes that shoestring, potentially touchdown saving tackle on that Ty Chandler fumble. Flip side, 4 plays later, Van Ginkel. Okay, he creates a turnover, but he cashes it in for the 6. So that's a potentially 14-point swing right there. Obviously glossing over a lot of other details, but ultimately kind of what turned what could have been a loss into a win.
Kirk Cousins threw for more yards in the Falcons game than the Vikings and Jets combined for total.
Jeez.
Think about that. When we return, we are going to get into a bit of a sordid, ugly topic. The 2003 Vikings and the 2016 Vikings were both 5-0 with a Week 6 bye, and it went pear-shaped after that. We talked about why this team is different when we return on the Minnesota Football Party. We're brought to you today by LinkedIn Jobs, and when you're hiring for small businesses, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. So you can check out LinkedIn Jobs because they have the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. This is not your ordinary job board. Let me tell you why. Because people on LinkedIn, and there are millions and millions and millions of people on LinkedIn, a lot of them are not actively searching, but they see the postings anyway. and it gets it gets seen by so many people. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. And a lot of those small businesses, they don't have the resources for a more elaborate job search or employee search, and that's why they use LinkedIn Jobs. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We are also sponsored today by BetterHelp. Halloween is coming up. Let's have some fun with what scares us on Halloween, of course. But what about those fears that don't involve zombies and ghosts? Therapy is a great tool for facing your fears, finding ways to overcome them, because sometimes the scariest thing is not facing our fears in the first place and holding ourselves back. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Overcome your fears with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Thanks to the everydayers who tune in all the time here at Locked On Sports Minnesota. Ron Johnson show tomorrow, special football show on Wednesday, and on Friday, the roundtable with Ron Johnson, Julia Daniels, Reggie Wilson, and yours truly. We do this live Mondays and Thursdays. All right, 2003 Vikings, 5-0. Moss and Culpepper looked unstoppable, missed the playoffs. Nate Poole, back of the end zone. No, the Cardinals have knocked the Vikings out of the playoffs. 2016 5-0 Vikings. They hit the bye week 6. Wheels fall off after that. Lost the first 4 out of the bye. Mike Zimmer's eye went nuts, and that team missed the playoffs as well. Those are the last 2 times they started 5-0 with the week 6 bye. And of course, sandwiched in there, let's not forget the 2009 team as well. But we're talking about the teams that collapsed. Why is this team different? What are the similarities or differences between the 2024 Vikes and the 2003 or 2016 version? Luke Inman, kick us off.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to pull these teams up here. 2016, starting offensive line, you got Matt Khalil, Andre Smith. Both those guys, your 2 starting tackles, get put on the IR. Then I remember they signed Jake Long. He plays like 2-3 games. He tears his ACL again. So offensive line after their bye, another week 6 bye, Jake Long gets hurt. TJ Clemmings now your left tackle, historically bad. Alex Boone was signed to be that big mauler, ended up being a huge free agent bust. Joe Berger in the middle, Mr. Reliable, okay. Fusco at right guard, nothing really special. And Jeremiah Searles at right tackle, nothing really special. So 2016 really feels like massive injuries across the offensive line. They just couldn't overcome with the depth that they had. Not sustainable, I guess, in any real way, shape, or form. Not for a pure pocket passer, too, like Sam Bradford. Needs a clean pocket to step into. Never really had a chance after that. The run game, too, I remember, really wasn't good enough to counter and keep pass rushers at bay long enough. Jet McKinnon, Patterson in the mix a little bit. Matt Asiata, decent, but not effective enough to lean on the ground game with that offensive line. And that's when the turnovers really started, too. They come out of the bye week 6. They come out in week 7 versus Philly. 4 turnovers. They lose to Chicago the next week in Soldier on Halloween. I was at that game. Worst game I've ever been to. That was the night of the Norv Turner fiasco, I believe, and then also what you're referring to, the Mike Zimmer eye injury thing with the play sheet, if I'm not mistaken. So, bunch of
Surely
drama.
Those weren't related. Surely.
Yeah, not at all. No, not at all. Of course not. Coincidence.
It was a play sheet.
Coincidence.
It was a play sheet, yeah.
Wielded
by no one.
Bunch of drama.
The win.
Things got messy. Things got ugly. A lot of injuries to overcome. And then you lose to Detroit in overtime the next week in absolutely an iconic, gut-wrenching Golden Tate walk-off fashion. Only wideout I've ever seen just shed Harrison Smith like a feather. Ultimate highlight reel walk-off. So defense tried to carry him, carry the offense, the rest of the way, but just not enough. The offense just wasn't good, in large part due to all the injuries on that offensive line. TJ Clemmings, I think that's all I really need.
That's all you need to say. Yeah, I think without question, 2024 offense is in infinitely better hands The comparison that scares me a little bit would be takeaway regression. Because if you remember, the 2016 start was propped up on an absurd level of defensive productivity, defensive touchdowns, takeaways. So that defense
Only someone wrote about this.
That defense had let me get to my notes. Still looking. That defense had 16 takes through 6 games. Over the next 9, they had 6 takeaways.
Yeah, 16's a lot.
This
Yeah, that
current
was insane.
16's a lot.
But this current defense is on that same path. Like, we've 13 takes through 5, which is basically the same rate
Same pace.
early in the season. And I think that that's a legitimate concern. Like, the Vikings are turning the ball over themselves, but they're out taking the other team because they've been intercepting everything, picking up fumble recoveries. I think that's legitimate. Like,
Yeah,
the
I feel like
Vikings
if one
cannot
turnover is
expect-
going to regress, the other one has to too, right?
Right, yeah, that's the thing. It's like, okay, so the Vikings are giving the ball away a lot. Why wouldn't that also regress? Like, if we're talking about turnover regression, which is totally fair, turnovers are a low-frequency play with high impact. They really control narratives and control outcomes of games in big ways. They're very difficult to get, and so they come in streaks, right? Totally fair to talk about turnover regression. I don't know that we're in a spot where it's obvious that the Vikings will continue committing turnovers. Now, Sam Darnold is just doing stuff sometimes, so there will be turnovers from that because of his play style. But, like, pitch to Ty Chandler resulting in incredible turnover for phenomenal field position, I don't know that that's something that's going to happen every couple of games. It just feels like that's not, like, a normal type of turnover. Kind of like the near turnover on the throw to Brandon Powell backwards that he just picked up and ran for 7 yards.
Yeah.
These are the kinds of things that kind of wash out, whereas, you know, some of these picks won't. You know, they'll come back. But it should be noted that the Vikings have had more turnover opportunities in these 5 games than in the 2016 5 games. They converted essentially every turnover opportunity in 2016 into a turnover. Here, the Vikings are, like, dropping picks. Like, there were 2 dropped picks in this game. Like, Josh Metellus, I had one, and then I forget who had the other potential drop pick. And it's like, you're not going to get all of those, obviously. You know, they'll joke, you know, that's why they play defense or whatever, fine. The Vikings did get 3 of them, though, right? And there have been other games where they've had turnover opportunities that they didn't get, fumbles that they didn't recover on defense, right? And, you know, I don't think the Vikings will continue muffing punts, right? Like, that's the thing. The Vikings' offensive turnovers seem to be a little bit more fluky and unsustainable than the Vikings' defensive turnovers. And what I've learned is that, generally speaking, this is very broad, you know, 10,000-foot view look at the data. Generally speaking, if you are better on non-turnover plays, you are more likely to produce turnovers defensively. And so, yeah, turnovers themselves don't do a great job of predicting future turnovers, but turnover opportunities might, for one. And then 2, you know, just being good at defense, forcing them into bad 3rd and long situations, getting a lot of sacks. Tons of turnovers happen on sacks and pressures, either through sack fumbles, right, or through, you know, a pressure quarterback throwing a turnover-worthy pass. And the Vikings are, like, doing that. So I'm not concerned. Yeah, I think the turnover production will probably decrease. Every starting member of the secondary has a turnover. That's bonkers. But
Holy crap.
right. Stephon Gilmore was the last member of the starting secondary to get a turnover. They were making fun of him for it. It's great. What an atmosphere.
Oh my God.
Right? That's
That is
Get
awesome.
good, Stephon Gilmore. Come on. You need some pointers?
It's great. And yeah, that's probably not the world we're going to live in, right? But we are going to have a bunch of sacks. It seems like that's a thing the Vikings do against some pretty sack-avoidant quarterbacks, too. And that will produce turnovers that the Vikings haven't achieved yet. So,
And
I'm
picks,
not,
picks against pick-avoidant quarterbacks, too. Like, in theory, they're going to play
Yes.
worse quarterbacks, too. They've taken down a lot, like Stroud and Rodgers getting a combined 5 or 6 from those guys, that's pretty absurd. Braun, go ahead.
Yeah, that is nuts.
Yeah. So last week I wrote a big article about like sustainability in the Vikings, and a large portion of it was dedicated to the turnovers. Yeah, we were allowed left. A large portion of it was dedicated to the turnovers, but one of the like statistical things that I did was look at what points did EPA and success rate diverge. Because like the Vikings have a very good success rate. Sam Darnold has a very good success rate, but on early downs, his EPA actually falls off really hard. And that's because that's when all the turnovers happen. Those don't affect success rate as much because they only go down as one failed down, but they affect the EPA a lot because they're very impactful. So that kind of tells you, oh, you should go look at turnovers. So that's what the article does. And you find a lot of what Arif said. Like it's not like they're going to just not turn the ball over. Like Sam Darnold's just not going to not turn the ball over. That's just going to happen. Honestly, Vikings in the playoffs, if the Vikings lose a playoff game and it sucks, it's probably because Sam Darnold turned the ball over a bunch. But that doesn't mean that only the good stuff about turnovers is going to go away. They are top 5 in the league in both takeaways and giveaways. And it does feel like for whatever rule you have about regression to the mean, what applies to one side kind of has to apply to the other because turnovers are weird. The ball bounces funny. The ball bounces up and gets tipped up into interceptions sometime. The Vikings have been on the right end of that one a lot. If you want to look for something that's going to regress, probably not going to keep getting those tip drills. But if you pressure the quarterback and he overthrows it and it lands in Cam Bynum's lap, that kind of thing does kind of happen on pressured dropbacks. So some of it will regress on both sides. Not all of it will regress on both sides, but also if you want to talk about the difference between like this team and those teams, the 2016 team just did not have the like statistical integrity. They weren't, top 5 in EPA. They weren't top 5 in all these things. They were doing pretty bad in a lot of categories, but just making up for it with a punt return touchdown. And the 2003 team was doing phenomenally on offense and horribly on defense.
Terrible.
Like those two teams had major glaring issues that were easy to see that were being papered over. This team, you kind of have to squint at stuff. You have to be like, well, turnovers are an issue, but I guess they're getting a lot of turnovers back, so it's like not that big of an issue. And the offense is playing well for the most part, and the defense is playing well for the most part. And you have to be, well, I guess they messed up a couple punt guns. It's like you have to squint so hard to find like the Achilles heel of this team. Which is why it compares so much more favorably
stop
statistically.
Getting blocked into their own punt returner. That would be
don't do that anymore, and then we're golden. But like, if you look at like the sustainability profile, you look at all the sustainable stats versus the unsustainable stats, and how do they, how real do they feel statistically? They rank closer to the 98 team or to the 09 or to the 2017 team than they do to these like total obvious fraud teams.
Yeah, 2016 defense, I think, was legitimate. That was right in the middle of like a generationally good defensive stretch from 15 to 17. Offense had no leg to stand on. 2003 offense absolutely had a leg to stand on. That defense just didn't get on the plane. Like look at their road games. When they traveled, that defense just didn't travel with them. It was terrible. And the offense also kind of disappeared on the road as well.
03 was usually it's the turnovers like you guys just talked about, relying too much on these close calls, the one-score games, key injuries like 2016. Maybe the schedule just gets like way tougher, something like that. 03, they started 6-0. They played a lot of top-tier teams, didn't lose any key guys. Schedule actually got like easier. And yeah, you're right, Sam. Yeah, 03, of all these three teams we're talking about, 03 just kind of the biggest oddball wild card. And you're right, road games specifically, a huge Achilles heel for that team. That was tough.
Major 98, like you weren't that far removed from 98. It's 2003. You're 6-0. You just had the Hail Mary Moss lateral to Williams. It felt like one of those 14-2 number one seed in the
We're
NFC
never gonna
team.
die. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, coming off 98 and 2000, getting like used to being that team with Randy Moss.
Right. I mean, they started 7-0 regularly in that era.
We are the greatest show on turf.
And
like that's who we are. Yeah.
We'll continue with bye week nitpicks. What do you need to squint at and see fixed? Coming up with Detroit in 13 days. That is next on the Minnesota Football Party. In a few moments, we'll also have our update on our FanDuel wagers for Week 5. And right now at FanDuel, there's a fantastic offer for new customers. You bet your first $5 on whatever, and win or lose, you get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. So when you have that hunch before the game, or maybe it's during the game, you want to bet on the live line, you can do that at FanDuel with $200 in bonus bets after your first $5 wager. All the lines, all the leagues. Check it out at FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Make every moment more. And if you haven't, check out the postcast from yesterday with Ron Johnson, Luke Braun, Luke Inman hosting, and myself. We appreciate all that tune in to that postcast, which has just been on fire this year after every single game. All right, bye week nitpicks. I'll start. Little PFF takeaway. I'm just the messenger here. But you've got Dalton Reisner sitting in reserve. Ed Ingram is the worst pass blocking guard in the NFL. That's a PFF stat, so take it with a grain of salt. Second in pressures allowed. 5 more yesterday. I would contemplate it. I would contemplate upgrading that spot. I think that's a bye week. That is a bye week nitpick that I'm seriously considering.
Ponder the right guard. Yeah. That's fair, I think. Ingram is a much better run blocker than Reisner, so I see why they would hesitate. Obviously, pass protection, in my opinion, is a little bit more important. But, yeah, sure. But Darnold has actually, in my opinion, been getting worse every single game. He was elite week 1, great week 2, and then every game seems like it's like his worst game thus far, which is fine. It's like 5 weeks, right? But turn it around, man. Like the issue in this game was how often he would force, and I do mean force the ball to Jefferson, right? There are open receivers from what I'm seeing, there are open receivers on a lot of these deep throws to Jefferson where, yeah, I do trust Jefferson to win some of these, double-teamed, contested catches, but he's not going to win all of them. These are low percentage throws compared to some of the other throws that you have available to you. I know that the Kevin O'Connell system has you stay on that first explosive read for a little bit longer than you typically would in a lot of other systems. That's something that Kirk Cousins has detailed multiple times, and it's playing out both with Kirk Cousins and Sam Darnold. That's evident, right? But you do have to move on, right? Like, it's not there. Move on. There's an open Johnny Munt on a deep crosser, he misses it entirely for a double or even triple team to Jefferson deep downfield, right? Or an open Jalen Naylor on a deep curl, misses it for a contested crosser to Jefferson. And it's not getting you very far, and it's why you're getting these 3-and-outs. I understand, like, people want the offense to be less aggressive in the third quarter and the fourth quarter when they've got these multiple score leads, and I kind of do agree with that. But and there's a whole spectrum, right? It's not just aggressive or timid. You can be in between, right? And that's, I think, where they want to live. But I don't know that the play calling is itself too aggressive. Yeah, these receivers are going deep downfield, but they're open. Throw them the ball. So that's my issue, is that he's not going through the reads as quickly as he should.
Yeah, stemming off that too, it's just that and the turnover-worthy plays every game. To your point, like those turnover-worthy plays, it started with week 1 Giants, like, oh, that was like a weird backwards alley-oop pass. Whatever, we won 34-6. And then you're right, week by week, it's just like it turned into like 1 or 2 boneheaded plays a game to like 3 or 4. And it just feels like those are the obvious kind of nitpicks that will eventually hold this team back. And they will lose a close game or two, if not even more, and you hope it doesn't happen in the playoffs. But if they don't clean that up, and I don't know what that looks like as far as like KOC goes, is it drawing up better game plans and concepts to like suit his strengths? The deep shots you brought up, like those were just super frustrating after a while. Is it just like KOC just hammering this point in every meeting, every practice, all the dialogue, just putting all his effort and attention into that part of the game? I don't know. I don't know what that looks like. When they're there in that building at TCO, Wednesday through Friday at practice. I don't know what that looks like, but it just feels like yesterday, watching those deep shots especially, it's like when you're in a funk, when your quarterback's in a funk, sometimes you just need to like see the ball go through the hoop. You know, Sam, you and I golf all the time, right? Sometimes you just need to go make a 3-foot putt and remember you can do it again. And for whatever reason, yeah, yesterday specifically just really kind of drove me nuts. And I know it drove a lot of people nuts, but that's the big thing I feel like that you could probably nitpick during this bye week. You got 14 days to kind of clean that stuff up. And obviously you get TJ Hawkins back, hopefully you get Aaron Jones healthy and all this and that. Outside of that, like that just seems like the clear and obvious, like a topic. You could get in some nitpicky stuff. We talked about turnovers already. Penalties, okay, 22nd in the league. Penalty yards per game, 23rd in the league. Penalties, actual number of penalties per game, 7.4.
Yeah.
That's just like the mundane kind of, surface level stuff. But the Sam Darnold turnover-worthy plays especially, I feel like eventually are just going to come up to cost him a few games.
Appetizer nerdy stat, the ADOT yesterday, average depth of target for Darnold, was the 4th highest ADOT in a single game this year in the NFL.
Relax, my guy.
Yeah,
Chill out.
It's so crazy. It's like, and I think it's both O'Connell like dialing up some of those and wanting to go for the kill shot a lot, which he's always done. This is why they blew all those leads in the last 2 years. But also Darnold being like very in on that too. Yeah. And anytime he saw single high, he would check into like, ooh, we got Jefferson one-on-one. And it's like, okay, but this is not that game.
It.
Yeah. Well, no, they were just straight manning up a lot of the time, but like this is not that game. The turf is slippery. Separation has not been there all day.
DJ
like,
Reed,
this ain't that game.
The number 2 corner in the league. Dude, DJ, I'm convinced after watching that game back, just to your point here, like not only is that secondary top 3 in the league, DJ Reed is cornerback 1 on any other team in the league but the Broncos with Patrick Surtain.
Oh, yeah.
I know he had a
Best
few penalties.
Secondary in the league, for sure.
Dude, he I mean, with
so
Sauce
good.
out for chunks of that game, Michael Carter Jr., their nickel, was ruled out. He almost single-handedly stonewalled JJ and Addison. Like, Velcro for 6. Sam, you asked us what'd you kind of learn about the game. I think I learned more about the Jets, what they're good at, what they're not good at, than the Vikings, to be honest. But
Yeah,
Also, hold on.
I have a nerdy
why
stat
are
about
we
it.
allowing Will McDonald to continue his fraud tour? That's crazy.
Yeah, dude.
Okay, Darnold, get rid of that one. Oh my God, throw it. Jesus Christ, dude.
What are we doing, man?
Sky that thing.
What are we doing?
Yeah.
Way out of the pocket. Why are you holding on to that?
So much time to make a decision. What are we doing?
So I got a nerdy stat for you on this.
Let me play it.
Yeah, play
We're
it.
in- Yep, we're into the main course here.
Analytics fans rejoice. It's time to get educated
Whoa, you're blowing my mind right now.
with the nerdy stat of the day.
I think my
In
favorite
Justin
is
Jefferson's-
Luke Inman's glasses. I think that's the best part of the graphic.
I try, man.
In Justin Jefferson's entire career, he has only had one game where he got less separation per route.
Wow.
One game ever?
One game. You will never guess which game it is.
I'm going to guess
Okay, don't tell me it's a Packers game.
Is it a
against Jair.
division game?
Lions.
I'm giving you no hints.
Lions, week 3, 22.
Jair Alexander, the one game the Packers fans keep pointing to about Jair Alexander.
I feel like we would be able to guess that, so I'm gonna go. I don't know. I'm gonna take the field.
It's gonna be some awful secondary.
Or no.
I'll take the field.
You take 2022 Bills.
What?
Oh, I mean, okay, sure.
Yeah.
It's greatest game of all time.
They were
Because
contested.
every catch
They
was
were
super
contested.
contested. They were
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
over him all the time.
Wow. I love
Also
that.
was one of his highest EPA games. He
That's
just
incredible.
popped off. But the tie for second most, on average, 1.9 yards of separation. Second worst he's ever done, tied for it with that 2022 Washington game where Benjamin St. Just played out of his skull.
One of
Yeah.
6 contested tries yesterday was Jefferson. 1 of 6.
Yeah.
I mean,
Just
that's
that they just did it, man. Good for you guys.
Yeah, if you win like 70% of your contested catches and you get thrown the ball 6 times in contested situations every game, you're going to have games like that. That's just it's very, streaky, right? So that's just going to happen. But I mean, this was Jefferson at the beginning of his career where he actually wasn't very good at contested catches until suddenly and dramatically he was. It's just a very weird element of Jefferson's career. That's nuts. Yeah, I didn't prepare a nerdy stat. Blitz rate 54% according to PFF. That's pretty high. That's actually higher than I think all of the ones this year so far. Certainly through the first 35 dropbacks that Aaron Rodgers had, and he had 54, 52, some crazy number of dropbacks. Opponents stay committed to the pass against the Vikings. Through the first 35 dropbacks, it was a 67% or 66.8% or something like that blitz rate. It was nuts how much they were going after this guy, which fine. I mean, like, his ankle's not working anymore. Do it. But incredible. Like, we're going back to dangerous Wild Flores territory where we would have a game of like 80% and we'd be like, yeah, okay, fine, sure, whatever, who cares?
Also, just exploring that page, the last time the Jets played Justin Jefferson was also 2 yards of separation. That was also one of his worst games. And then just for fun, I added Stephon Diggs to this because he's played the Jets a lot. They've done that to him 4 times. This secondary is just unreal.
That's a nuts.
I feel like JJ was very good at contested catches coming out.
Imagine
of
if they had like a pass rusher like Hassan Reddick or something. That'd be nuts.
That'd be crazy.
Too soon. Can't bring that up to them.
Yeah.
Harrison Smith, I'm sure you guys already saw this stat. Got to pay off the tease, though, from the intro. Harrison Smith, 4th player in NFL history, over 1,000 tackles, over 35 interceptions, over 20 sacks. He joins a group with Brian Dawkins, Charles Woodson, Rondé Barber. And I know you guys don't know who those guys are. They're pretty good. Okay. They're pretty good. So, HOF, what do we – first ballot? Are we there? Vaulted?
Okay, so I think he deserves first ballot. I don't think
you don't
get
think he will?
Yeah, 1, because he's a safety. It's much more difficult for safeties to get into the Hall.
There's a conversation here.
2, I think in order to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, they need to speak about you outside of your game previews and your games in like mythic terms. Like when we get to the time it's like in a lot of these broadcasts, like, you know, when you're on SportsCenter, ESPN, or whatever, when you get to Harrison Smith, you will talk about him in these legendary terms, which is great. He deserves it, right? But the thing with someone like a Troy Polamalu or an Ed Reed is there is no when you get to him. They will insert themselves into the conversation. That's not a knock on Harrison Smith for not inserting himself in the conversation, but their cultural presence in the sports environment was much larger. Even though I would argue that Harrison Smith, I think he's as good as Troy Polamalu. And maybe I'm on a Vikings podcast. I've been covering the Vikings forever, and maybe that's just my.
Yeah, good.
But I think he is.
I'm there.
He's insanely good.
I'm there.
Right?
Yeah.
So he should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. I don't know that the cultural cachet in the sports media environment is going to let him get there.
That and the other thing, too, which is just kind of one of those unfortunate things, Dawkins, Woodson, Barber, Troy Polamalu, Ed Reed, they've all won
Dawkins
Super
took a
Bowls.
second to get in, didn't he?
They've all won Super Bowls. Yeah, I think you're
That's
right
it.
on Dawkins. I think he did. Yeah, I don't think he was first ballot. I'll look that up. One more nerdy stat real quick. Non-Vikings, Aaron Rodgers is now 0-38 when trailing in the 4th quarter to a team with a winning record.
Wow.
0-38 when trailing in the 4th quarter to a team with a winning record. I just think
really
Rodgers
funny because
and like all these
the
comebacks and everything else.
So the explanation that a lot of people would give for this all the time is he was too risk averse, which is why he doesn't have interceptions in those games, and that clearly doesn't apply here. Get bent.
Not here.
The Vikings handed Aaron Rodgers one of the worst games of his career. Like, no matter how you slice it. That rocks super hard. Bye. That's the taste in your mouth. That's the last time you played the Vikings. See ya.
That's what I think. Yeah, it's probably the last time he plays the Vikings, and it's the worst one.
Yeah.
Oh, whatever, Sam.
Yeah. What,
no, he's doing the.
No, I'm doing the. Oh, you missed it.
You didn't see it on the. Oh my God. Okay, I think it was after the first. It was in the 1st quarter. I think it was after the first interception. Rodgers was trying to get a call in from the sideline, and he turned over to Nathaniel Hackett and gave him the Oscars wrap it up, and he got like angry about it. There is a beautiful. I'm going to send you the video.
Great.
It's
incredible.
So beautiful.
It's great. Brian Dawkins was not a first ballot Hall of Famer.
See,
good fact check. My nerdy stat: yesterday, the Vikings could have really been in some rarefied air. Greg Zuerlein made a field goal with 50 seconds left in the 3rd quarter. So if that kick would have just been on the other side of the quarter break, the Vikings would have been the 6th team in NFL history to lead by double digits entering the 4th quarter in their first 5 games of the season. Highly specific, but impressive. You know, the team with the record for double-digit leads in the 4th quarter to start a season. It's a Vikings team.
Is it the 2003?
I was going to say, it ain't a Zimmer team. I know that.
1969 Minnesota
Nice.
Vikings did it the first.
Oh,
8
the greatest
games.
defense of all time. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, no surprise there. And I don't know how to filter this on StatHead. Leading by 13 or more in the second half of every game seems fairly historic as well. That's a pretty nice 13-point lead every single second half. You'll take that all day. Quick conversation. Let's just go around the horn. Think of it as a 4-minute drill. What's your panic level on the special teams? Because obviously Reichert is fantastic. And occasionally they'll do something great, like C.J. Ham blocks a punt against San Francisco, or Trent Sherfield with the great punt down yesterday. But then you've got, Dallas Turner like diving at the ball at the goal line and rolling in the end zone. You've got so much dumb stuff yesterday.
Ivan Pace, the
muff
running into
punts,
the kicker.
running into the kicker, which I don't know. I'm not going to be too furious at Ivan for that, but a lot to
He slid further than he thought. Okay.
2020 levels of who was the coordinator that lasted 1 year that was so
Marwan Malouf?
That was
I think,
Maloufian.
Great
Maloufian yesterday. What's our level of concern? Anyone?
It's all the same guy. Like every one of those mistakes was on a Caleb Evans. So except for the Ivan Pace thing, it was him getting blocked into Brandon Powell that almost caused that fumble, and then it was also him getting smoked as a jammer that caused the big punt return that set up their first score. We just got to talk about a Caleb Evans as a gunner, maybe, or maybe he just got smoked by a stronger player that time and it won't happen again. But like, because it was very contained to one specific guy and it's special teams, like you can try to put another guy in there and it's not really that hard to change. It's not like O-line where there's like a chemistry thing and there's all these, there's all this like, weight around it. I don't know, try a different gunner if you want, or don't. That's kind of why I'm not panicking.
So is Najee Thompson on the practice squad or anything? Is he?
He's still hurt.
He's hurt. IR.
He's on IR for all year. Right?
Yeah, I think he's season ending.
That's right.
Or was it? We should check. That I thought that might have been designated to return. Could be wrong.
Injury designation.
No, the
August
designated to
21st.
return was Hawkinson and Reisner.
Oh,
And they could only do the
Return to
two. So I
Vikings.
think Najee was on season ending. And it seemed like there wasn't like I think he suffered a pretty serious injury. So.
Yeah, he's had a knee injury since January 2024. Spent all of training camp on the active pup list. Yeah, must.
Sam, I was trying to look up the stat head query that you'd put together. 13 points or more at some point in like the second quarter, I think, is what you were looking for.
Second half would be because that San Francisco was only 13 in the second half.
Okay, let me take a look at the third quarter. Because that's the best I can do is by quarter in StatHead, and I couldn't actually find the Vikings using this. So I think I have to figure something out for like the beginning of it. But the Bills had 4 in the second quarter at some point. So that's nice. Go Bills.
Yeah, Bills Mafia. We've done nerdy stats, nitpicks, special. I think I'm fair. I am medium alarmed about the special teams. The kicker is just a different entity.
Yeah.
Like it's the
It does feel like we're talking about something different. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
Will Reichert is Jesus.
he's not going to
really-
catch hair until he misses a field goal. So he's going to look like a hair metal rocker.
Oh, I forget.
pretty
Yeah,
soon.
was it a hair or the shave thing? Okay, it's the hair.
I think it's both.
Oh, okay. Love this.
He's gonna look like you ever see the Always Sunny episode on the mountain?
No.
Well then
I'm gonna look it up though now.
Yeah. Good talk.
You pulled a Ron Johnson there. You're a media reference that nobody understood.
Bail. Abort.
All right, week 5 picks. Not our greatest week. Again, 1,000 mythical dollars we started with, and increasing minimums and maximums. My picks last week went 1-1, or I should say yesterday. Seahawks lose. They were 6.5. Terrible bet. Lost 100, and I hit on the Ty Chandler over yardage, and he tried really hard to not get it.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
knew.
that was rough.
He knew you had this imaginary fake bet.
If he catches that toss, that might have been a loss.
That's true.
Right, yeah.
It's a good point.
He only had a 30-yarder wiped out, had another 7-yarder wiped out, and for a while there, he was right on
blocks in
the edge.
back
Where,
both, right?
yeah, like one TFL could have put him under for me. Fortunately, he he survived. So I lost a net of $34.
So funny how we
and
gloss
change.
over a lot of those plays, but when you have a prop bet down, it's like every one of those callbacks and penalties just sting so much more. That's funny. Yeah.
Yeah. We had some bad beats this week. Inman, you had one of them. You had Vikings Jets over 40.5. Now let's see, 23 plus 17. Let's carry the.
No, it hit.
One.
Don't worry. Yeah, trust me.
The math
It hit. It hit. Here, I'll change it. It hit. I'll update this. I got it. Who's been keeping score here too? Oh, and Sam's in first place. Okay.
Yeah, funny how that works. Arif is
Jalen
blacked
Naylor, I had over 11.5, and I knew it was a trap bet. I was like, why is this? It's one catch. Why is that so low? And usually
You would
those
think-
are the trap bets. Usually those
You
are
would
the
think
traps.
that they'd find him, fourth in the
Just
progression once.
Yes.
Well,
They
I
were
mean,
like-
as we
Sauce
discussed,
and DJ
this was not a
Reed.
game for going through progressions.
That's true.
Guess not. Yeah, no, this was a game for taking every single go ball alert you could find and just
Yeah.
YOLO
Ni-
balling all of them.
92 true yards, 61 penalty yards. I believe 2 of them were like illegal contact and holding, and 2 of them were like pass interference.
Yeah,
There's
there
like
were a couple
another
long
fifth
pass
penalty.
interferences.
Yeah.
Did
Yeah.
he even have a target?
Jalen Naylor?
Yeah.
No,
He had
I don't
one.
think
Oh,
he
no?
did
I
he
don't
have
Was it
one?
taken away by penalty?
I don't
feel like he had
remember being halfway
That's
excited
rough.
one time.
That's
yeah.
rough.
They're like,
Yeah,
all right,
double
you were
check.
pretty good as a wide receiver 2, but now we don't want you can't be a wide receiver 3.
Now we're
you don't
having
really
trouble
fit.
moving the ball.
Not one
We don't
target.
need you. Aaron Jones is out. Our running game's not working. We don't need you. It's fine.
Vikings need TJ Hawkinson back and Aaron Jones in the worst way. Ty Chandler might be a little bit broken. The other pick or I guess we got to Inman. He went 0 for 2. So you lost $130. You're still in profit by $19. Arif, you dive into deficit. You went 0 and 2.
Join me in hell.
You are 5 and 5 overall. My win was your loss. You had the Aaron Jones over that obviously did not hit, and you had the Panthers.
He was doing
spread.
so well.
Yeah, he would have got there.
Yeah. You lose $101, and you're down to $938.
Yeah, okay, so my bets that I placed here in London legally at a broker, it went about as well, actually. I placed like 16, and I put them in a bunch of like 9-fold parlays and a bunch of doubles, and obviously all of them in singles as well. I put in, I would say, probably $300 American dollars worth of bets. I emerged with about $80. So it was pretty bad, and they were bets like Patriots -1, where it's like, hey man, if you moved your foot like an inch forward, I would have cashed. Okay, like
It seemed like a rough week, just in general. Week 5 for
Bengals,
a lot of props. And
Bengals
stuff, yeah.
plus 2.5. Man,
Yikes.
it's just
Woof.
like all of these were
Yeah.
like stakes in the heart. Like, okay,
Yeah.
I missed out on Trey Tucker over 38.5. I wasn't close. Great, that happens. But all of the close ones went against me, man. Of course, it's my 1 week in London.
Yeah, it felt like a weird week. Week
Yeah.
5 was kind of a weird week for fantasy and prop bets, things like that. Everybody said, "Oh, Romeo Dubs is out. Devontae Wicks is about to go off."
Well, he
had,
got the
2
targets.
catches.
Your
He had the
process was
targets,
right,
he's just not good.
and your wallet loves.
He got
loves
the
to hear that.
volume, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
your wallet
swear, to
loves
if I
to
were a
hear that.
Packers fan, my God, I would be.
that was rough.
I'd
Yeah,
be
well,
ready
I've
to
got great news
ship
for
that
you,
guy
man.
out.
Don't got to worry about that.
Nope, never.
Braun, you go 1 and 1. You're 3 and 7 overall. That's 3 straight.
Both of them
weeks.
by a half. Both of them right on the line.
Yep. Addison over 36.5. Guess how many yards he had? 36.
36.
Guess what I put on Addison? Over 38.5.
You don't think those couple yards are going to make a difference, and it always comes back to Hunt.
He had the targets too, but this was deep in the game when Sam Darnold couldn't hit the broad side of a barn.
He had a lot of time.
And like guys, he was falling
wide
over.
open on that out route.
He was
late in the game.
okay.
Wide open.
Yeah, he was. So 2 of his targets he had slipped on, and
Yeah.
only one of them I think people noticed because the other Brandon Eccles fell on one of his targets that he slipped on. He was still standing, but it had impacted his ability to get to.
Yeah,
the
that
end.
one looked like he
Got
slipped.
it. Got it.
Yeah.
You hit
But we
on
squeaked
Jags
it out on
minus
the Jags.
2.5. That was pretty.
That was
clutch.
a fun game. That was a fun game to watch.
I thought watching that entire game, I thought I had them 3.5. So the whole like overtime or the whole like final bit, I was like, well, they're gonna kick.
Like,
I'm gonna lose.
The group chat,
They got
like,
a walk-off
hey, wait, did I have
touchdown.
2.5 and 3.5?
I was like, wait a minute, did I win this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was like, I was in a whole other sweat the whole time.
Yeah, I was going like, oh man, but they need to score a touchdown for me. Don't kick. Like when Joe Flacco hits 2 long touchdowns, I was like sitting there going, wow, they're up 14. We're feeling great. And then he like claws it back. It's like, oh my God, this is coming down to a last minute field goal. Crap, I lost.
Who's got a big division lead right now? I'm like the Texans right now, sitting
Your Minnesota Vikings.
atop the
Yeah,
table.
you're the Vikings.
Vikings are
Up
the
by a
Texans,
1.5.
Texans are up by 2 games. Vikings are up by 1.5. I'm up by about 260 or 250 on Inman. Then Arif is behind Inman by about 80, and Braun, you're behind Arif by only about $56. So that is a manageable deficit.
Oh no,
I still got
stemmed
this-
the bleeding. I've been 1-1 for 3 weeks in a row now, and
Luke, you
let
got
you guys just kind of lose
activate-
back to me.
Yeah, I was going to
Slowly
say
walking.
how many more weeks here do I got to activate this advantage here?
Yeah, trade deadline. So what? 3 weeks?
Saved
2
my
weeks?
life.
Weeks.
dude.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not a lot.
Coming up.
Yeah.
Coming up.
But the bets will continue to get bigger, so it still behooves you to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, to wait.
To wait
I'm
till last
anxious
second.
now. Yeah.
We'll be back.
Great
live.
mindset to be betting.
Yeah.
Is anxiety and chasing losses. Good job.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, I have to ramp it up from $1 to $2 next week.
Yeah,
'Cause I
you
got
gotta
two
you gotta
$1 to make
get
it
those
big.
extra dollars back for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've lost on both of your increased quote unquote bets. We'll be back live on Thursday. Make our week 6 bets. Hear from Ron Johnson. Talk more about the bye week and what is in store. And we'll look around the league in week 6. Luke Inman, he's on the postcasts. Luke Braun writes for Wide Left occasionally on Locked on Vikings as well. And Arif Hasan, Wide Left Substack. I'm Sam Ekstrom. Thanks a lot for watching, listening, commenting. Please subscribe to Locked on Sports Minnesota, and we will talk to you on Thursday.